I'm really glad you're here. I'm Sandy Reese, Chief Encouragement Officer here at Get Fully Funded. This is an open office hour. We are here to talk about what's on your mind, to answer any questions that you have, to talk about what fundraising could look like for your organization this year, to get you some clarity, get you some focus. Whatever you need, this is just an open time. I was sharing just a minute ago as everybody's just kind of getting in, and I had a really strong intuitive hit that I needed to do this sort of thing. And I'm a big believer in following your intuition. And as I was watching people, especially the Meals on Wheels folks, be like, I'm really nervous about what's happening with the budget, or is our program going to get cut or whatever. And, and the more you dig into some of that stuff, it's like, well, some of that may really happen or it may not. I don't really care. The point is, if you're struggling with fundraising, you don't need to. There are ways to make things simpler. There are ways to put some things in place so you don't have to worry about cuts like that. Personally, I would rather have diversified revenue streams, which means there's money coming in from a lot of different places, and I don't have to worry about if government grants are going to be cut or not. That is the space where I want to be. I never want to be too reliant on one revenue stream that it makes me worry about what else might be happening. I like to know that I've got a lot of money coming in from a lot of different places, and it is all good. So that's where I'm coming from. Here's how we're going to work this today, and I'm trying to watch watch everybody come in. I love it. You guys are just continue to come in. Welcome. Glad you're here. Glad you're here. All right, so here's what we're going to do today. This is your time to ask questions. You can type those into the chat box if you want to, or if you have something that's a little more complicated, you can type in the chat box and let me know that you would like to unmute, and we can unmute your line and let you jump in and chat with me for just a little bit. I want to try to start with some of the chat questions, so if you've got something that you want to just type in, start there. And if there's another resource that I can point you to, if there's something else that I can share with you that might be helpful, then I'm going to do that as well. And I know people are just continuing to come in, and I'm sure people are going to kind of come and go throughout the hour. Sorry, I'm just checking on one thing. I love how many of you, I don't know your name. This is incredible. Thank you all again for taking the time to be here today. All right. Let me go, we'll get started. Jenny Kent, my new friend Jenny from Daytona Beach. Jenny is starting a capital campaign this year as people are struggling to keep their operational dollars. Is it even harder to get new monies? This is a really good question, and I think this will fold in a lot of different things from is it a bad time to raise money? Is it a good time to raise money? How do we know? Well, here's the deal. If you need to do a capital campaign, which for those who aren't sure what that means, that's what you do when you need to build a building. You need bricks and mortar money, basically. There's no perfect time for anything, and you need to go when you need it. Now, so you got to also watch, if you believe that there are a lot of nonprofits that are struggling, you're going to put yourself into what we call a poverty mindset. And it's really easy to buy into the fact that, things are bad, people are struggling, or maybe you have a belief that nonprofits are supposed to struggle, and it doesn't have to be that way. So if you think, and I teach a lot about mindset in some of the programs that I lead, if you think that people won't give, guess what your experience is going to be? People are not going to give. If you believe that there is money out there for you, then you will find money. It's really that simple. And if you ever look at the Giving USA numbers that show all the money that's given in the United States and where it comes from and where it goes, there's a lot of money that's given to charity. It's like 300-something billion. It's a crazy amount of money. If all you did was get a small percentage of the people who are already giving to you to upgrade, you would come away with so much more money. So sometimes it's not that you need new donors, is that you need to do a better job with the donors that you have. You may need to work on giving your donors a reason to upgrade their giving. So for example, if you've got a whole lot of people who typically give $25, then ask yourself, what would it take for those people to feel so moved that they would want to give $100? What would be the motivation or the inspiration that they would need? So you might be able to go back and look at the way that you've been messaging, the work your organization does. It might be in how you approach them. It might be more about how you're building a relationship with people and um, how you're talking with them that motivates them to do more. I find that people like to fill a hole. So if you have a situation where, and Jenny, this all is applicable to you. It's very applicable to everybody. So at Jenny's organization, she's got a feeding program. If you find that you're turning people away, and let's say you're turning away 25 people a day because there's no food for them, then you go out to your donor base and you go, look, we are turning away 25 people a day. If we had X number of dollars, then we could eliminate that problem. People, they love to give to stuff like that. They love to give to something where they're meeting a need, or what I call filling a hole. And it's really just a matter of letting people know that here's the issue, here's what we're trying to do, we need your help, here's what it's going to cost, and people are like, yeah, I can solve that problem. So if you don't know what your numbers are, and this is for everybody, you need to know, what does it cost you to provide a unit of service to the folks that you help? Or if you're saving animals, really whatever you're doing, break it down into a unit of service and then figure out what that costs you. And you need to be able to share that with folks. You need to be able to express that and message it in a way that people go, yeah, yeah, yeah. So here's another good distinction here. If you are talking about your annual fund, you need to stop. If you are sharing with people that you would love for them to help give so that you can pay your staff or that you can keep the lights on, you got to stop all of that. Because frankly, people don't want to fund your existence. They don't care about your need to pay staff and keep the lights on. What they care about is the work that you're doing that's changing lives. In other words, talk about outcomes, not your existence. Talk about impact instead of status quo. Hope that makes sense. So back to Jenny's question about starting a capital campaign this year as people are struggling to keep their operational dollars. So first of all, are people struggling to keep their operational dollars? If they are, that's their issue. I can point to example after example after example of people who are not struggling. And I promise you, they are believing that there's money out there for everybody and then some. And they are willing to go after it. They're willing to back up and look at things they've done and be very curious and say, wonder why that happened the way it did, whether it worked or it didn't. So anytime you do anything, if it works, you're going to ask yourself, why did it work? If it didn't work, you ask yourself, why didn't it work? Because that information is knowledge you need to go do something better, right? So first of all, just get rid of the whole people are struggling. There doesn't have to be a struggle. There's only a struggle because people allow a struggle. You can raise more money. I've done it. Tons of clients who've done it. Is it harder to get new monies? No. And so there's two places where you're going to get new money. This is for everybody. Number one, you're going to go find brand new donors. Should you be looking for new donors? Yes, everybody should be looking for new donors all the time. If you're not building your donor base, if your donor base is not growing, it's shrinking. It's one or the other all the time, okay? So you need to develop donor acquisition radar and have that radar up all the time. And this is something that I teach at the Inspired Fundraising Retreat. I teach this in a lot of programs that we offer, and that's how do you go find ideal donor prospects easily and in large numbers. And there's a method to that madness where you can look at the people who are already giving to your organization and see what they have in common, and you can go find more people like them. So new donors, absolutely. The other way you're going to raise new money is just what I said a minute ago, and that is to upgrade. Look at the people who are already giving and figure out how you're going to upgrade them, how you're going to take them to the next level. And so what this might look like is just thinking about people who are given 25, how do you take them to 50? People who are giving 100, how do you take them to 2? People who are giving 1,000, how do you take them to 2,500? Because for some of you, that kind of shift, that's going to be huge. And that can generate a lot of cash in a hurry. For a capital campaign, what I find is that you've got to have a really strong case for support. And then when you start talking to donors about why you're looking at a capital campaign, why you're looking at building a building or expanding your existing building or whatever, and how that's going to change more lives, how that's going to make a bigger difference in the community, that's where they're going to get the inspiration and the motivation to go from maybe making $1,000 donation in a year to committing to, let's say, a $25,000 pledge for your capital campaign. That's really possible. It's very doable, and it does take some strategy. It takes some thinking. It takes a very strong case for support. A case for support, if any of you are not familiar, is basically a list of all the reasons why somebody would give to support the thing that you're doing. If you don't have a case, if you've never really thought through that, you really should do it, even just for your annual operations, because having that list of reasons of why somebody should give can be super helpful when you're asking people to support what you're doing. So in other words, in Jenny's situation, Jenny has a food pantry, and they're also doing some work with the homeless. If you can talk about what happens when people are hungry and how that can really limit what they're doing, or if we're talking about kids, this was another thing that, you see these things hit Facebook, these little bits of news, and now I'm learning, like, is it real? Is it not real? I don't know. I'm hearing some noise in the background again. If you're on the phone and you're in a noisy place, would you move to a quiet place or else mute your line? Thank you. So I've seen these things about, different politicians who are saying, hungry kids don't need to eat, whatever. I don't know how much of that is real and how much of that is fake news, but here's the deal. If you are a parent and you've ever been around kids who are hungry, they're really tough to deal with. Just imagine being a teacher and having a room full of kindergartners that are all really hungry. It's not only are you going to have behavioral issues, they're hard to sit still, they're hard to control, et cetera, et cetera. Those are some of the reasons for why your program to feed the hungry kids needs to be supported. And that's the kind of thing that you want to talk about. And when you can put that in some context that has some emotion behind it, people are going to be more inspired to give. Okay? So when you're talking about the reasons why the work that you're doing is super important, and the reasons why, or a story about why your program needs to be supported and how it's making a difference in the lives of people who are participating, now you're talking. Now you're talking. So I've done some work with therapeutic horseback riding, and one of the stories that I told them was an experience that I had myself when I volunteered with a therapeutic horseback riding program in my area. And so I was working with this young man. I think he was about 12 at the time, and he was pretty nonverbal, except after he had his riding lesson. He would come out and ride, and then all of a sudden he would be able to say a few words to his mom. And I remember the day that she came over to me after his lesson, and she's just crying and saying, this is the one time of the week that he will make eye contact and talk to me, is after his lesson. She was just crying, and she said, this means so much to us. And I'm looking at the folks who are raising money for this organization going, man, if you're not scooping up these stories and telling them, you need to be. All of you have these stories. All of you have stories about how you're changing lives and how it's impacting people and getting outcomes that these folks would never have in the first place. Or if you're rescuing animals, same thing, how you're saving more lives and how you're making a difference in the world. You need to have this sort of stuff. And it's actually a very fun exercise just to grab a piece of paper and start writing down, like, why would people give to our organization? I do this exercise a lot with boards because it really gets them thinking as well. Why would somebody give to your organization? Let's make a list and keep going until you're like, I can't think of anything else. I've actually hit the bottom. Then you can use that sort of stuff, use that messaging in the work that you're doing. You can use it in social media, you can use it on your website, you can use it in email, you can use it in newsletters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm winding in a whole lot of tips here for you in the answers of some of these, but these are, in a way, these are some really basic things, and they're very important. I'm a big believer in, if you want to raise more money, you've got to talk to the right people in the first place. You can't just go out and think you're going to talk to everybody in the community and get everybody to give. They won't. People have their favorite charities. They have their favorite causes. So you've got to figure out who are the right people for you and go talk to them. And then you've got to have good messaging, because if you have the right people, but you show up and say, hey, support our annual fund, people are going to be like, oh, whatever. They're not going to get all engaged with that. And then you also got to really watch the timing of that. You've got to give people a reason to care. You've got to move them. You've got to make them have what I call a touch the pearls moment. Like, oh, I just love that organization and the work they're doing. Gosh, it's a great organization. If you're not doing those things, then yeah, you're going to struggle. If you are just doing event after event after event, you're going to have a problem. If you're chasing grants and just trying to get grants and not building other revenue streams, yeah, you're going to struggle and have a problem. I've had a couple of organizations come to us for some support in the last couple of years who have completely relied on a grant, and then the grant went away and they're like, we're going to have to close programs. Well, by then it's almost too late. So it's really important to develop those diversified revenue streams and to do some things that are going to support you long term. All right, let me move on to the next question. This one's from Jeff. Jeff says, so I heard the Trump budget is going to cut CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grants. This is almost 10% of my budget. Where now do we lobby on this with no budget? Well, Jeff, I am not a lobbying expert by any stretch, but it seems to me you want to think about people who can impact what is happening with that budget. So you want to be talking to your senators and your representatives, and that is not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is, well, if that's almost 10% of your budget, depending on how much that is, it could be pretty substantial or not. And I think I might even spend some time trying to figure out how you increase some other revenue streams. I mean, you can do some lobbying depending on what kind of nonprofit you have. Some nonprofits have to be very careful about lobbying and advocacy, because if you do much of that, you put your 501c3 at risk. So if you have a different kind of organization, that may be okay. But I think you also have to really weigh your opportunities. Does it make more sense for you to try to do something about that, or does it make more sense to put that effort into something that is going to bear more fruit? And I think for most everybody, it makes more sense to try to develop your donor base, just frankly. Go find new donors, build deeper relationships with the ones you have, get really good at messaging your organization so that whenever you do reach out to people, you're making them feel good about supporting you. And they not only feel really good, but they want to give because they love the work that your organization is doing. That's kind of how that works. Carla is asking, is there a resource to find out if individual affluent folks want to give their money to causes? We need individual donors because our nonprofit is only 7 months old, so we're not eligible for state or federal grants. Okay, good. Glad you know that you need to be developing a donor base. And you're right, at 7 months old, grants are not a good idea. Now, there's actually an article on the blog, it's probably not too old, why you don't want to go look for rich people. Nobody needs to we need to go find us some rich people because they'll give us money. No, there's not a list of rich people. What you can do is look at other organizations whose donors are the same as yours. So let's say if you're working with a food pantry, you might look at the donors that are also supporting a soup kitchen or a food bank or a homeless shelter, because they're probably the same donors same as people who are going to support your organization. And then if any of those organizations publish a list of donors, or if you sense that they're all doing a certain kind of thing because that's where they're finding new donors, then you might try that too. You will never steal their donors, and nobody else will ever steal yours. So for any of you who are thinking, like, I don't know, maybe we can just go grab their donors. It doesn't work that way. Think about this for yourself. What organizations do you support? Who do you give to? If you're not giving to another nonprofit, you need to, because you need that experience, what that feels like to be a donor, what it feels like to be thanked well or not, what it feels like when you get a crappy newsletter or when you get a great newsletter. You'll learn a lot from being a donor to somebody else. And so what I would suggest then is you think about how do you just build your donor base. Don't necessarily look for rich people, but look for people who are very passionate and care about your organization. If they care, they're going to be more likely to give. They're going to be more likely to reach out to their friends. They're going to be more likely to support you in other ways. And frankly, and I see people do this, there's a couple of zip codes in Knoxville. I live in the general Knoxville area. There's a couple of zip codes where there's a lot of really wealthy neighborhoods, and people are like, oh, we'll just get the mailing list for 37919 and we'll send a letter and we'll get a lot of money. And I'm like, no, that's not going to work. And here's why. Number one, you're going to be mailing to a lot of houses that don't give to charity. There are people like that. They just don't give. You're going to be mailing to houses that don't care about your cause. Maybe you're with the animal shelter and what they really love is the Cancer Society, or maybe you're with the ballet and what they really love is their alma mater. People have their favorites. So it's a whole lot smarter to go look for people based on who is already giving for your organization and already deeply committed to your organization. How do you figure out who's deeply committed? Well, they're the ones that are giving the most money to you right now. Doesn't matter if it's $1,000 or 10,000 or $1 million, whatever they're giving. If that's the biggest gift you're getting, those are the people who are raising their hand going, over here, I really like what you're doing and I want to help. Go, you can spend some time and work with them. So for Carla, I wouldn't worry about rich people. I would worry about building that donor base. And you can do that through going out and speaking to groups. You can do that through you might be doing it through social media. You might be able to do it with house parties. You might be able to do it with some stories in your local news. There are a lot of different ways you can do that. And I think that is what's going to be key for you. By the way, I'm going to talk a little bit at the end about a new program we have coming up. It's called Amplify Your Impact. And in that program, I'm going to go into a lot of detail about this, about figuring out exactly who your ideal donor prospect is and how you find them and what you need to say when you do and how you build relationships and how you put a really hot newsletter together. And I'm going to have samples and examples and all that. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. But if you're interested right now, you can go have a look at that at getfullyfunded.com/amplify. Starts next week. It's going to be a fantastic program. It's the program that I wish I had had when I was new to fundraising. So just want to let you know, if you're interested in, you really want to, you like this concept, you love to figure out and get really clear about how you find your ideal donors, it's going to be in that program. So getfullyfunded.com/amplify. You can go take a look at that. All right, Jessica says, we're getting ready to launch our first monthly giving campaign. Woohoo! We've looked at past donations and set good suggested levels for 3 groups. Any tips on what would inspire an annual donor to become a monthly donor? That is an excellent question, Jessica. Put yourself in the donor's shoes and ask, what would motivate me to give? If you ask people to join your monthly giving program, that ain't it. Nobody wants to join a monthly giving program. What they want to do is give to change something. So I spent personally 5 years at the local food bank, and I started a monthly giving program while I was there. And one of the things that I was able to do is calculate my number. So actually, this is another thing we're going to do in the Amplify program. I'm going to show you how to calculate your number. It's basically your cost per unit of service for your organization. And it's a number that you can share with people that's going to get them excited. And what I figured out was that it costs us basically 81 cents to handle enough food. So bring it into the warehouse and then get it back out in the hands of a food pantry. 81 cents to provide enough food to feed somebody for a day. Okay, 81 cents. Did you get that? That's an amazing number, right? That's a number that is a kind of a stop and think kind of number. People are like, wait, what? 81 cents. I'm like, yeah, you probably have that much in your couch. You can actually feed somebody for that. So you get your number, and then you start multiplying that out. So what I did is I took the 81 cents and then I multiplied it times 30. And then what I told people was, it's this much to feed somebody for a month. And it's this much to feed somebody for a year. So you take that number that means something, and then you just multiply it into a couple of different ways. You can do it per week, per day, per year, per whatever makes sense for your organization, and then ask people to do that. So you're not asking people to support your monthly giving program, because that's some real egocentric language, and really people don't care about your monthly giving program. But if you ask people to give to feed somebody a meal a day, now we're talking. Now that's inspirational. Now that's the kind of thing that a lot of people will be excited to support. So think about, for myself, some of the organizations that I give monthly to. One of them, I literally feed a child in Africa for a month with my monthly gift. Another one, I am preventing heartworms in dogs with my $8 a month gift, which is just, it's such a no-brainer. That was like Of course I'll do $8 a month. So think about that and see if that's helpful for you, Jessica. Now, for the rest of you, I hope you're seeing that there's a real difference, again, between talking about, hey, give to support our annual fund and help us save 10 dogs this month. Help us do this. Help us do that. That's what you want to be asking people to do. People who are going to give they really want to partner with you to make some amazing things happen in the world. They don't want to just give, and you don't ever want to be just about their money. It is not about their money. It is about them and their support long term. So think about this. You've probably heard the story about the goose and the golden egg. I'm going to have to get myself a stuffed goose and a little golden egg. Which one do you want? Do you want the golden egg because it's gold and that's going to be money now? Or do you want the goose that's going to give it to you over and over and over and over? Right? Well, that's what your donors are. They are those geese. And if you take good care of them and you inspire them regularly and you keep them in the know and you make them feel good about giving, they will give over and over and over. And that's how this works. So if your organization, if you are struggling, go back and look at how you are taking care of your donors. Are you? If you're not, you've got some work to do. And if this is the first time you've heard this and you realize, oh, we've really not been doing a good job with our donors, then it's okay. Just draw a line in the sand and say, all right, from this day forward, we're going to do a better job. I realize that we've not done a great job in the past. Nothing we can do about that, but we're going to do better going forward. All right, next question is from Wesley Berry over in Boone, North Carolina. Hey, Wesley. Wesley says, we have 2 endowments currently. Well, that's cool. Small but growing. We have an offer to begin a 3rd one in the name of a former donor. I think 3 is too many. Any thoughts? Well, that's certainly going to be a lot to keep up with. So for those of you who aren't familiar, an endowment is basically, it's a fancy savings account that you put money into and you invest it, and then you never touch the principal, but the dividends or the interest, the proceeds, you can use to pay for all kinds of things. So in this case, if you have 3, I'd be very curious what they're for. If they are for 3 very different things, it might make sense to have 3. If they're all supporting annual operations, I would really question that because that seems really redundant. And it might make sense internally, but if your donors are confused, they won't give. So you guys can all write this down. A confused mind always says no. So if you are ever inviting a donor to give and you give them too many options, they're going to get confused and they're going to shut down and not do anything. If you're sending out an appeal and you ask for a financial donation and you ask people to buy a ticket for an event and you ask people to volunteer for something, you're asking for too many things and they are going to say no and they're going to do big fat nothing on any of that. So just be really clear. And Wesley, I think I'd be having a really strong look at why you have 3. Jessica, another question from Jessica. Our donor database is 1,000 people. Yay. Is it worth it to try to get a bulk mail nonprofit permit? I've looked into it briefly and it looks complicated. Yes, it is. So without knowing some extra information, that would be a tough thing to say yes or no. So let me kind of peel back my brain for you here, and you can think about. Here's the way I would think about it. I would think about those 1,000 people and think, what's the benefit for me doing a mailing? So if I'm going to send them a letter, doing it bulk mail would actually, it's going to save you some money. Is that part of your plan? Have you been cultivating those people through the mail? Because what you don't want to do is never do anything through the mail except all of a sudden you show up and you're asking for money through the mail. I'm hearing a lot of background noise again. If you're on the phone, maybe you could move to a quiet space. There we go. I think we got it. Okay, so if you've not been doing anything through the mail and all of a sudden you toss an appeal out there and you think people are going to really give, they may or may not. You have not been cultivating them through the mail, and if you haven't been doing much of anything, they're not going to respond. So for me, it's not simply a matter of should we do bulk mail. I would back up and say, should you be mailing? Should you be mailing to that group? You don't want to mail to them if you don't think that that it makes sense. If it's not part of your asking plan, if it's not part of your cultivation, if you've not been cultivating them through the mail, I would really question that. Now, I will say this, a lot of people have moved completely to email, and there's a lot of people doing email appeals and e-newsletters and things, and that's fine. It's easy, it's quick, it doesn't cost a lot of money. But what's happened is everybody's email, your inbox is just full, right? Raise your hand if your email is not just crammed full every day. And so actually sending something through the mail can get on to somebody's radar really quickly. I just had an appeal here a minute ago. I was going to show you. Doesn't matter. It might be a way to get in front of people in a way that you can't through email. So Jessica, I would back up and really think about whether or not you should be mailing, and then ask yourself, okay, if we're going to mail, does it make sense to get that bulk mail permit? And yes, it is complicated, and I would get some help. Donna Izell. Hey, Donna. Donna says, we're having trouble reaching people by email. Spam filters keep knocking us out. Yep, I'm currently using rescuegroups.org email platform. I'm looking at switching to MailChimp. Any thoughts on the best way to reach our supporters? I know our social media site is much quieter than it used to be also. Yeah, so this goes back to what I was just saying, that everybody's inbox is just crammed full. And so people are not reading nonprofit newsletters like they used to. And oh my gosh, I just saw 2 of these yesterday. If your subject line says March e-newsletter, people are not going to open that. That is the most boring subject line on the planet, and they're not going to open it. And if they don't open it, they're not going to read anything. If they don't read anything, they're not going to respond, and so you just wasted all your effort. You need some more jazzy subject lines. So that's an issue. I mean, and then the content and what you share that's a whole other piece. I look at a lot of e-newsletters, as you can imagine, and I work with a lot of groups on their e-newsletter. I've seen very, very few that were worth the time to read. Most of them are full of egocentric language. It's like, hey, look at us. We got this program going. Look at us. We got that thing going. And I'm over here going like, what of this should I care about? Because it's all about you. I feel like an outsider. There's not a thing here that moves me to want to give a crap about your organization. So you got to really make sure that when you're writing a newsletter, when you're writing anything that's going to your donor, that you are thinking about what they care about and what they're interested in. If you're writing what you want them to know, then you're basically pushing information out instead of sharing things that they're going to care about. And that's a huge difference. When you stop pushing information, when you give yourself enough time, when you need to do a newsletter, you stop and you go, okay, if I am my donor, what do I care about? What do I want to know about? And I'll give you a giant hint. It's stories about lives that you're changing. It's really that simple. You want to tell them stories. You want to tell them things about what you're doing that's making a difference in the world. Otherwise, it's all egocentric and nobody cares, and people will stop reading. And basically, when you send out crap newsletter after crap newsletter, you are training your supporters to stop opening the file. So if your open rates are declining, then you need to go back and really think about that, because basically you're teaching people to stop listening to you. And that you can change it, you can turn it around, but the first thing is you got to understand that, oh, we're actually running people off or pushing them away. And that whole bit about, well, how do you share the right thing? We're going to cover that in the Amplify program. I'll be teaching you what a good newsletter looks like, how often you send it, what your stories need to look like, what kind of messaging you need to use, what kind of pictures you need to use. I'll give you some tips on subject lines. That's all in the Amplify program that starts next week. So if you're interested, it's getfullyfunded.com/amplify. And you can go check that out while we talk. All right, let me go on to the next one. Looks like Shreya. Hi, Shreya. Our international health nonprofit has exhausted our current network of foundations. We've reached out to many new foundations and have had some success, but we're not seeing any patterns in whether we get a response. Do you have any strategies for successfully getting a response when reaching out to a foundation cold? This would probably actually be a better question for Susan than for Sandy. Here's what I think. So I would never just pull a list of foundations that like say that they support whatever my organization's mission is and just try to approach them cold to get a grant. I'm always going to do a little more research to find out what they're interested in. What are their goals for their foundation, and is that something that fits with what my organization is doing? grant writing is an art and a science, and getting the attention of a foundation in a lot of ways is not that different than when you're approaching an individual donor. You want to find out what matters to them and what they care about, and what they want to accomplish that matches with something that you're already doing, so it becomes a hand-in-glove fit with that organization. So number one, I would look and see who they funded in the past, and if they have funded an organization or a program that's a match for yours, I would see who's on their board and then run that past your board to see if there's anybody who knows anybody, because that can change it from cold to a warm lead. I would just do a little more research. I would not try to go approaching foundations cold. And what it sounds to me like is that you're putting all your eggs in one basket, that you're trying to get all your money from grants, and I don't think that's a real healthy way to do it. In fact, one of the things that I teach is what we call the 1-10-1000 rule, where we teach you to have one signature event where you do it really well, you hit it out of the park, and then you don't do any more special events during the year. Not for fundraising. Fundraising and donor development and appreciation, those are different. But as far as fundraising, do one event, do it well. Go after 10 grants. Why 10? Well, it fits really well in the 1-10-1000. My point there is don't leave grant money on the table. Go get everything you can. And then go build your donor base up to 1,000. If you already have 1,000 donors, build it to the next 1,000. Focus on the individual donor development so that you have diversified revenue streams. And that way, if you lose one, you're not dead in the water. So don't put all your eggs in that grant basket. It's not a healthy way to do. I mean, that's the same situation that a lot of people are in right now, where they're very dependent on government grants, and now the president's offering this new budget and everybody's like, oh, what are we going to do? Well, if you didn't have all your eggs in one basket, it wouldn't be a problem in the first place. So diversified revenue is a very healthy way to go. And a lot of foundations, frankly, want to see that. They want to know that you have a lot of other people who are giving to your organization. They want to know that once their grant is finished, that your organization is going to be healthy and continue on. So you may as well do that anyway. All right, Crystal is asking, Crystal says, I do the marketing and fundraising for an international orphan hosting organization, and we struggle to grow our base of donors, but we also need to grow our host families at the same time. Yep. Do you have any tips on how to grow a donor base at the same time as growing an active supporter base? What I would do there, Crystal, and it's interesting, I work with a group that is taking care of orphans in India, so I do have some experience with this. They're not necessarily bringing kids back with host families, but here's what you need to do. You need to treat those as two separate audiences, and you need to do the ideal profile exercise for each one so that you're very clear about who makes an ideal donor prospect and who makes an ideal host family prospect. So for example, if you did this exercise and you figure out for your ideal host family that I'm going to just make this up, okay? I don't know if this is accurate or not. They have kids of their own. They're active in the community. They're attending church services, etc. You might target local church groups or moms groups to go and talk to about becoming host families. You might be able to do some Facebook ads just to get people interested and have them take the first step. It's just purely marketing. That's what it is. So I would get really clear on both of those, your donor and your host family, and then develop strategies on how you want to go approach those people and encourage them to at least initiate that process. Because I'm going to guess with a host family, that's a huge commitment. That's a big commitment, and they're not going to say yes right off the bat. You may have to have multiple conversations with them, so you just want to start that process. All right. So this is from H. Really enjoyed hearing about the Meals on Wheels 12 Seniors of Christmas you talked about last year. Yes, excellent. For those of you who didn't see that, there's an article on my blog where I talked about my local Meals on Wheels affiliate that I've worked with, and they did a thing called 12 Seniors of Christmas. We were trying to eliminate their waiting list, and so they basically profiled every day for 12 days one of the seniors on their waiting list. They raised so much money. They raised about $20,000 in 2 weeks. It was crazy. But it was very exciting, and they eliminated that waiting list, and they gained a ton of new followers and a lot of new donors, and the newspaper picked it up, and it was crazy just what all that generated. It was really cool. If you want to, you can actually go find them on Facebook. It's Smoky Mountain Meals on Wheels, and you can probably scroll back through and find the original posts. It's from last year. You can scroll back and find them. Any other Meals on Wheels based experiences you can share? There's several things that I've actually helped them do over the last year. They had an Ask event last year where they brought a whole bunch of people together and told their story and had some of their volunteers stand up and talk about what they've experienced in delivering meals and what that's meant to them. And of course, as you can imagine, there was not a dry eye in the house. And then they invited people to make a commitment, to make a pledge and make a donation, and they raised a lot of money. So that was a very cool idea. They also, you probably do as well, if you're with Meals on Wheels, they, in March, what do they call that? March for Meals is what they call it. So they do almost a month-long awareness and advocacy and fundraising campaign. And it's a lot of work, but they wind up getting like the mayor and all the big wigs in the community and everybody involved, and they send all these people out on a run with a volunteer to go deliver meals. Now, for the rest of you, just imagine if you've heard of Meals on Wheels, but you've never experienced it for yourself, and all of a sudden one day you go get in the car with somebody and you get to go knock on the door of an 85-year-old woman who is homebound. She can't get out of her wheelchair by herself. She has no way to cook for herself. And you bring her a hot meal, and all of a sudden she lights up and she's chatting, and you leave there with a rock in your stomach and tears in your eyes because you can't believe the impact you just made on another human being's life. That is a fantastic way to get people excited. And so when they're very strategic about getting people in the community involved and sending them out on a run, yeah, the awareness goes through the roof, and all of a sudden everybody's like, dang, Meals on Wheels, that is an awesome nonprofit. We love that group. Makes everything else the rest of the year a whole lot easier. A whole lot easier. For the rest of you, if you don't have something like that, you sure could start something. I mean, that would be easy enough to do. And if you look, you can find holidays for everything. You can even go Google obscure holidays and find all kinds of crazy stuff. So everybody can use something like that. Ivana, you've got, so nonprofit has 3 distinctive programs. You're wondering if we should give donors the different programs options for donations, or should we have the same amount options for each program? Okay, so this is a really good question. Now, sometimes programs make a lot of sense to you, but they don't make sense to your donor. So I want you to really think about that. This is for everybody. I sit on the board at my local horse rescue group, and we have this issue comes up a lot because in the mind of the staff, there are about 6 different programs, and I look at them, I'm like, nope. Your donors don't know enough detail about what you do to understand all these different programs. And when you talk about the different programs, you can actually confuse people. So for you, Ivana, it might be that case, or it might be that your programs, no, they really are. They're 3 very distinct things that you can easily explain to people. And if that's the case, then I would focus on one thing at a time. If you go out to a donor, whether it's in person or in an appeal or at an event, and you say, look, we have these 3 different things, and for each different program, we've got these 3 different giving levels. So now you're giving them 9 options. That is way too confusing. It's way too much. You want to never ask people to choose between that many things. You want to give them maybe 2 or 3 different options to help you do what you do. And if I knew more about your organization, I could help you figure that out really fast. But I want you to just be really mindful that it may make a lot of sense to you, but it probably won't to your donor. And it really doesn't matter about you. It matters about the donor. It matters about the donor and if they understand or if they're confused and if it's easy for them to give. See, for everybody, it's all about the ease of understanding and the ease of donating. So if your donor has to work really hard to read and understand what you've shared with them, you're going to lose them. If they get confused, you've lost them. If it doesn't move them, you've lost them. So anything that you send out, you got to really think about what's going to move them, what's going to be really easy to respond to, what's easy for them to understand. It's just the way things are. We all move at the speed of light these days, and we're not going to stop and take the time to read a whole lot and try to get it and understand it. So without knowing anything else, Ivana, I would say keep it super simple, and you'll be way, way, way better off. Yeah, Crystal's saying that's one for her too. Stop asking for too many things. I would absolutely, boy, take that one to the bank. I'm telling you, people get confused and they will say no. They'll just check out and go on to the next thing. And by the way, those are things that we're going to be dealing with in the Amplify program. So if you are interested in learning how to grow that donor base of ideal prospects and getting the messaging nailed so that people read it and go, oh, I want to help them, and they either get out their checkbook or their credit card right then, I'm going to be teaching that in the Amplify program. And for those who just came in, it's getfullyfunded.com/amplify. You can find all the details there. It starts next Tuesday. All right, Carla, do you have any advice for intermediary organizations that fundraise on behalf of schools or community-based organizations to provide access to arts education? Any suggestions on how to get a donor to give to us instead of directly to a program? Okay, that's a good question. So what you're going to have to do there is go back to this idea of case for support, and you're going to have to come up with a list of reasons why it makes sense for somebody to give to you. And that list might include maybe you are carefully vetting out the schools or the organizations that are doing the best job and getting the best ROI. And so then your donor can trust that you've already done that work and they don't have to, and they can be assured that their dollar is going to be used well. I mean, in a lot of ways, you can look at the messaging that United Way uses and see what of that makes sense for you. Because it's very similar. United Way is also a pass-through organization. So you've got to come up with a list of reasons why it makes sense for them to give to you and not directly to the organization. So hopefully that is helpful. All right, let me see here. Let's go to Donnie. What is too many fundraising emails to send out every month? I have heard 5 to 7, but do not want to turn donors away with a large number. Ooh, yeah. Okay. 5 to 7 a month seems like a lot to me. I would personally be hitting the unsubscribe button at 5 to 7. I think that's a lot. Let me say what you really need to do is back up and look at your total communications plan and think about not only the times that you are asking, but what are you doing in between the asks to nurture that donor and build the relationship? What are you doing in the meantime to make them feel good about the last gift that they gave to you? Or what are you doing to make them feel good so they give their first gift? So write this one down if you guys have a pen, 3 to 1. 3 to 1. You can ask as often as you want, as long as in the in-between time, you are giving donors 3 really good communications that warm their heart and make them feel good about giving to you. So I don't know how you would do 5 to 7, like that's more than one a week. That's like every 4 days you would be emailing asking for money. I think that's way, way, way too much. Personally, I recommend about 4 or 5 times a year to ask for money, and in the in-between time, you better be sending out a hot newsletter, and not a crap newsletter that's all full of self-centered language, but a hot, sizzling, make your donors feel awesome kind of newsletter. You may need to really look at doing a thank-a-thon where you're picking up the phone and calling donors to tell them thank you. You may have to really think about what you're doing that's making people feel good in between. Now, when you do that, what you're going to see is your opt-out rates are going to go down. Your response rates of the number of people who are actually giving is going to go up, and your average gift size is going to go up. When you're paying attention to what you're sending that's a non-ask, right? Think about for yourself. If you get an appeal from an organization, they ask for money, and you give them a gift, and then couple of months go by, you don't hear anything, and then a couple of more months go by, and you don't hear anything, and all of a sudden they show up again and they want more money. What does that feel like to you? Doesn't that feel like that friend that the only time you hear from them is when they want something? Yeah. Guess how long people are going to give to a nonprofit like that? Not very. And the way you fix that is 3 to 1. You make sure that in between the asks, you have 3 really hot communications. When you do that, you'll be fine. Kit Frodenberg. Hey, Kit, how are you? All right, so Kit is with a conservation organization and is going to participate in an online 24-hour giving day. Awesome. We've received a $5,000 challenge gift for endowment building. We can keep endowment building plus capacity building at the same time. I recommended to the director and board we focus on endowment. I'm afraid our donors will not understand the difference between endowment and capacity building. Yeah, and honestly, here's another thing. Kid, I'm really glad you asked this question. You guys want to be really careful with jargon. So the words capacity building and endowment, that is nonprofit fundraising industry jargon. If we were to go out on the street and ask the next person that walked by if they knew what capacity building meant, they may or may not know. And if you use language that people don't understand, you just turned them off. They're not going to give because now you made them feel dumb, and nobody wants to feel dumb, right? So first of all, kid, I'd be really careful about the language, and I would explain it in a different way. And I agree with you. I would pick one. I would pick one thing and ask them to support one thing, because it's going to be easier to write the text that's going to help them understand why they might support the one thing, and it's going to be easier to figure out what the number is for that one thing. So I would choose one. And that's going to depend on what you need the most. If you need money for capacity building, then go that direction. If you need money for endowment, go that direction. Because it's really about what you're trying to do that has any kind of sense of urgency to it. And honestly, for everybody, when you're going to ask people to support your organization, really it's best to have some kind of sense of urgency. Otherwise, people don't really have a reason to give. You know, if you're like, well, support our organization. We've had a great year. We're doing great things. Then like, what's the motivation for them to give you a donation right now? And that's when having, like, you're trying to eliminate a wait list or you're trying to solve a problem right now, then people are like, oh yeah, I need to give now. Stephanie has a great question. What's more important to figure out first, grants or the one major event? Let's see. I think if it were me, I would probably jump on the grants first, and here's why. I almost guarantee you that if you go do research, you're going to find that there are grants that you could apply for that are due all throughout the year. And I would not want you to miss an opportunity that's coming up in 60 or 90 days because you're very focused on an event. I would want to see you get that deadline calendar for your grants nailed down so that you know what's coming up and when, and then you can go on and do some other things. Events are good. Events have their place. Events are a lot of work. And when you do a signature event, it is a lot of work. And it can have big payoff. I mentioned earlier, I sit on the board of Horsehaven of Tennessee. It's a horse rescue group. We took our signature event, which is a takeoff on Dancing with the Stars. It's kind of a crazy event, really. 3 years ago, that event grossed $16,000, which I thought was not nearly enough money for the time and energy that was being put into it. We put a committee together. We made a lot of changes. We put a lot of energy and effort into it. And the next year we raised 55, which was a huge jump from 16 to 55. Last year we did 93. Yeah, we did. We went from 16 to 93,000 in 2 years, and already this year, the event is in May. We're ahead of where we were this time last year. So who knows what that's going to be? But it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It requires working with a committee and going after the sponsors, and that can take some time. I mean, ideally, if you're going to hit something out of the park, you need to be working on that probably 9 months to a year in advance. I would get the grant calendar first and then work on that. But I'm glad you're thinking about those, Stephanie. Deborah, what's your thoughts around one request, one time per year? So currently we ask our board members for annual fund, event, and other miscellaneous campaigns at separate occasions. My thought is to ask one time in a bundled request in one meeting. We ask for those same three things. You know, that can work really well, and that also can work really well with sponsors. If you, instead of going to a company and asking them 3 different times to support 3 different things, I find a lot of companies actually appreciate it if you sit down with them and say, would you give, and we're going to use part of your sponsorship for this and that and the other. I had this exact same thing happen with a Girl Scout Council last year. They were able to ask a major oil company in the area for some money, and I think it was about $50,000 that they gave them, and they spread that as sponsorship across 3 events, and it worked beautifully. I've actually had business people say to me, like, please do not come back 2 or 3 times during the year asking for more money. Like, can we just do one thing and be done? So, Deborah, I think that's pretty smart, and if you can do that with your board members, that's good too. I absolutely support asking board members to commit at the beginning of the year to doing something. Every board member needs to give financially to your organization, the end, and that goes for everybody. If you need help with that, I can help you with that. Get your board on board with making a commitment and doing their job. All right, Christina, brand new to the nonprofit world, starting with hurricane relief in Haiti. Hey, welcome. With such a huge undertaking like natural disaster relief where everything has to be built from nothing, how do you suggest we get that message across clearly to potential donors? Our focus now is emergency healthcare. I would talk about why emergency healthcare is needed. You can talk about how hurricanes in the past few years have really wiped out what little infrastructure was there in Haiti. We actually have been writing grants for an organization in Haiti, so I know a couple of things about this. You're going to have to tug on heartstrings and then help people understand what their dollar will do. An American dollar, will do a lot in other countries. And so that's what you really need to do is help them understand that their gift of $25 is going to do a lot. So I would talk about that, why that emergency health care is needed, how people are suffering in the wake of that, and how you can solve it with very little money. And then go figure out who your ideal people are, get in front of them, ask them to give, and you're going to be off to the races really fast. We actually work with several organizations that have international they have international services, and those are some of the strategies that we use with them. All right, so I'm noticing that we are going to, no way I'm going to get to all the questions today. I'm going to, let me go ahead and talk real quickly about the Amplify program, and then I'll come back and answer a couple more questions, and I may stay on just a few minutes longer. But I did want to share with you a little bit about Amplify Your Impact. So this is a new program that we've put together where I'm going to be teaching things like how to get in front of your ideal donors, build that donor base, master your messaging so that you can grow your organization faster, eliminate a waiting list, and maybe even sleep better at night. I know for a lot of you, you probably spend a lot of time worrying about money, and you don't have to. When you have a system that you can follow, instead of patching your knowledge together from this free webinar and that ebook and this workshop you attended, that can be a little tough. And so what I try to do, and this is what I wish I had had when I started, was one system that's easy to follow. I make things as simple as possible, and also give a lot of real life examples. A lot of the organizations that we work with, and some of the folks in some of our programs they've been swinging for the fences in the last couple of years and basically hitting the ball out of the park. So in this program, what I'm going to do is show you what you need to do to get those kind of results too, and give you some great examples. So this program is going to be perfect for you if you are new, if you're unsure or uncertain, if you're inexperienced, or if you are just flat lost and have no idea where to start. This program is going to be fantastic for you to get you started in some practical language, real world stuff. It's not theory. You don't have to figure out how to make this work or where to start. If you're excited and passionate about your organization, you are tired of throwing spaghetti at the wall, you're ready for somebody to say, look, here's how this is going to work. You really want to take a look at this program. Because I can show you how to shortcut your learning curve. I can show you how to get started really fast. One of the things that I love doing and I'm really good at is figuring out low-hanging fruit. So in the program, you're going to have the opportunity to get on Q&A calls like this, but probably with fewer people, and say, okay, Sandy, so this thing you said about finding ideal donors, I'm not sure how I would implement that. And so you're going to have that chance to jump on, and I'm going to help you figure out who you're looking for, where to go find them, and even help you get some language around what that might look like. Now, this program is probably not for you if you're a much more advanced organization. If you're very experienced, if you're a veteran, this is not for you. If you already know everything or think you know everything, it's probably not for you. But if you're new, still trying to figure it out, you would love to get clear, you would love to know exactly what you need to be working on, I can help you with that. So if you go to getfullyfunded.com/amplify, you can read the whole thing. Basically, this is going to be a 6-part webinar series where I'm going to teach you how to put a fundraising plan together. And I've got dozens of samples and worksheets and a template that I'm going to give you for putting your plan together. We're going to talk about the right mix of strategies, events, grants, asks. Some of the things that we talked about today, I'm going to show you how to build your donor base and grow it to the point that you have enough people giving that it is funding your budget. It's fully funding it. I've got a formula that I'll show you of how to calculate how many new donors you need. So not only are you going to know exactly who you're looking for, but how many, which is very cool. And then you can scale some of the ideas that you have. We're going to talk about how to ask and when the time is right and how much to ask for and what your number is and how to motivate people to give. We're going to talk through all of that. So you never have to guess. You never have to wonder about, well, what should I put in this appeal, or what should I say if I'm face-to-face to get somebody to give? I'm going to teach you that. We're going to talk about donor nurture so that you know how to keep people giving, and then how to do what we call rinse and repeat so that you know how to take some of the things that you've been doing and do them over and over. I'm also going to talk a lot about systems, which will save your life. When you have a system, a way of doing things over and over, it saves you a lot of time. We're going to talk about getting you help, getting some support. We're also going to talk a little bit about mindset. So it's going to be a jam-packed program. You're going to get some of it live, and some of it I'm going to deliver in the form of some videos that you can go watch on very specific things. You're going to get some ebooks, handouts, a ton of worksheets, handouts, templates, and examples. It's going to be pretty much every Tuesday starting April 4th through May 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be jumping on a webinar, and if you can't make it, don't worry. We're going to record it so you can go back and listen if you want to. Immediately after the live webinar, we're going to have a Q&A session, so you're going to have a chance to jump on and ask questions and get some feedback right away. And then I do have a ton of bonuses I'm going to be adding in there as well. Those bonuses are going to include things like getting help. Each of these are recordings of webinars that go deep into these subject matters and give you an idea of exactly how to go get started getting help for your organization. And these alone are amazing trainings, and they're just going to give you great additional material to go utilize. So it's going to be a very comprehensive, very complete kind of system that you can take, start to use for your organization, and see some big results pretty quickly. This is the stuff that I teach my clients. It's the stuff that that has generated a lot of revenue for a lot of organizations, and I'm pretty sure it will work for you. By the way, if you're wondering, will this work for you, you are welcome to call our office, and I will get on the phone and chat with you, and we'll talk about, is this the right program for you or not? I've actually done that with several people already. It is there's two options for paying. If you want to join us, it's $497 if you want to pay in full, or there's a payment plan, 3 payments of, I can't see it under my screen, looks like $77. So you can get all of that information here. You can read what we've helped some other people do. It does start next Tuesday, so if you're interested, you may want to go ahead and jump in and get registered for that. It's going to be a great program. I'm not expecting it to be a real big group, which means your chances of getting some one-on-one attention are pretty good. So go check that out, getfullyfunded.com/amplify. I would love to see you. We start next week. All right, let me go back and just let me just scroll through here right quick and see how many more questions there are. I bet there's a lot. Okay, let me answer just one or two more, and hopefully you're still on here, those people who have asked these last questions. And by the way, if you have questions about the Amplify program, you're welcome to type those in as well. All right, this one's from Linda. I'm with an organization that has launched social venture franchises. Cool. We've never linked those businesses with our fundraising. Any suggestions for beginning? I would absolutely let people know that you've got some social enterprise going on. A lot of people think that's really cool. I don't know that I would necessarily ask people to give to support those, because I think that's going to confuse some people, but I would absolutely own it and let them know that those organizations do benefit your organization. Those businesses, those enterprises are benefiting, because what you may find donors who want to go spend money there because they know that it supports your organization. So I would absolutely let them know. And that may be a really good opportunity to bring some people for a tour. You know, seeing firsthand some things that you're doing can be really huge. Like, for example, if you've got, maybe you've got a catering business that is employing people who are formerly homeless, which there's actually one here in the Knoxville area. Coming for a tour of the kitchen and meeting some folks can be huge for encouraging people to want to give and give bigger. So you might want to have a look at doing something like that. It could be really big for you. All right, Bonnie saying thank you. Good. I'm glad you got some good stuff here. So Christina, back to Haiti. So there's some organizations in Haiti, but none are actually doing what we're doing. That's good, because then you are the only game in town. Would love to bring people here to help. Yeah, we may want to jump on the phone and have a whole conversation just about that, because there may be some things some resources that I could help you. All right, Sandy asking a good question. For the Amplify program, is this for our organization or one person? Could I have other board members participate in the program too? It's really per person. There are some things that we do that are for the whole organization. Amplify is really per person because what I want to do, I want to really build your skill set. I want the same person showing up every week to learn. I don't want board member number one week and board member number two because that's not going to really help if they're only getting bits and pieces of it. So it's per person. If you've got a number of people on your board that you would love to have access, you may want to call and let's chat about that and about what your board members actually need. Oh, Kit saying thank you. Linda saying thank you. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate all that. Margie saying thank you. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you are inspired by this. Jenny saying thank you. Joy saying Crystal's question applies to my organization too. Can you go back to the question about distributed organizations with no central brick and mortar? So I'm not sure if I understand exactly what you're asking, Joyce, but if you don't have a building, you can absolutely raise money as well. We actually work with a lot of organizations that have no facility, and it's not a problem. It's all in how you message it. It's all in what you're asking people to support. Donna saying she got some good ideas. Awesome. I'm glad. I'm really glad you guys got some ideas for those who are inspired. Excellent, excellent. But here's the bottom line. Fundraising does not have to be hard. When you understand how good fundraising works and how to set yourself up for long-term sustainability, it is not that hard. And you can do it without being stressed out. You can do it without being confused. You can do it without being overwhelmed. You can actually make it fun. It can actually be a lot of fun. And that's really what I want to share with you. And if you are worried about what the proposed budget that the president is putting forth, then if you're worried about that, then you probably need to go focus on some other things. You really should be building a donor base to support your organization long term and create that sustainability that you really need, because that is where you're going to be able to build revenue streams that are going to support your organization and allow you to sleep at night. It's really just that simple. All right, folks, thank you all so much for being here today. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all that you do to make this world a better place. I'm grateful for you for carving out some time to be here today and be part of what's going on. I'm really grateful that you spent some time with me today. I feel like Carol Burnett wanting to sing I'm so glad we had this time together. Yeah, I'm a total silly girl. All right, so that's it for today. Thank you all again for being here. If you're interested in that Amplify program, go ahead and go grab your seat. It does start next Tuesday. If you have questions and want to talk to me personally, please give us a call in the office or shoot us an email. I'm happy to give you a call and we can talk about that. All right, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all again soon. Bye, everybody.